And welcome to another Mark Bishop show where this particular time, of course, you know I love authors and I love good books. And nothing like a good book, you agree? Well, that's the title of this series. And I'm fortunate today to have another brilliant author, and I think this is a terrific book. Ideal gift coming up, too. I'm referring to Jotham Stein. It's called Negotiate Like a CEO. Jotham S. Stein is the principal of the law offices of Jotham S. Stein P.C. He has more than 2 decades of experience representing entrepreneurs and C-suite executives, board members, venture capitalists, private equity principals, and investment bankers as well, and less senior employees of all size companies. So let's ask the question, what does it mean to negotiate like a CEO? How important are employment agreements when you think about it? How can you learn to protect yourself and your family, for that matter, if the worst does happen? Well, these are all questions that I shall be asking Jotham, and he addresses his book, Negotiate Like a CEO, with the goal of equipping individuals with the tools that they need to safeguard themselves in business and employment. And from what I've read, it's a lively, engaging read. Negotiate Like a CEO. It outlines how employees, executives, and entrepreneurs have protected themselves in the past and gives readers eye-opening advice on how to make sure that they won't get taken advantage of. And in this day and age, I tell you, this is critical. The book describes best practices, common pitfalls, and sky's the limit possibilities at any career stage. So whether you're just out of college or you're gunning for that C-suite job, this book's a beauty, okay? And that's has been said also, too, that Jotham he's helped me throughout my career. I'm referring to Andy Cohen, and he's the founder and former CEO of Caring.com. And he's helped me from setting up strong employment agreements to securing stock compensation to protecting the management team during the sale of my company. He's the sort of guy that you want in your corner. Well, isn't that fantastic? So we're lucky to have him in our corner on my show. I'd like to welcome Jotham Stein. Welcome, my friend.
Thank you, Mark. Great to be here on your show.
Well, you are a graduate of Stanford Law School and Princeton University. You was admitted to, the practice in California, in Illinois, New York, Colorado, and the District of Columbia, as well as the United States Supreme Court and several United States Courts of Appeals and United States District Courts. Plus, you're also a member of the multiple bar associations, including the American Bar Association. Boy, you've had a busy career, haven't you?
I have. I've had a very interesting career, and my career's still going, so I'm not retired by any stretch, but it's been fascinating. I've been very fortunate to represent a lot of very interesting and wonderful people over the years.
Well, I've had some terrific authors as my guests on Nothing Like a Good Book, but you're certainly a virgin author. Executive Employment Law was one book, Protecting Executives, Entrepreneurs, and Employees, and How to Guide for Practitioners. They're your other books. And your new book, of course, Negotiate Like a CEO, an enthralling book on how to top entrepreneurs and executives protect themselves. So you are a lawyer, and you specialize in helping executives and entrepreneurs protect themselves in the corporate world of today. I mean, other than your career and going along and minding your own business, how did you get into that field?
Totally by accident. After Stanford Law School, I worked a couple of years at the big Palo Alto law firm, which is national, international now. And then I went out on my own, hung out my own shingle, and a number of lawyers who knew me to be a good lawyer started referring me clients, often individuals, often C-suite executives, because the companies in the entrepreneurial world, the big law firms, they often don't want to represent the individual. Mm-hmm. They want to represent the repeat player, which are the companies and the venture capitalists. So one thing led to another. 25 years later, that accident has become my career, which is still going on. And I represented and helped hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of entrepreneurs, executives, and employees in all stages of their career.
Well, I mean, you do say that you wrote this book to help the people out there who have no idea how to help themselves in their employment relationships, right? Too many Well, just too many of us just don't know how, or perhaps have been too afraid to ask. So, what inspired you then to write and negotiate like a CEO?
Well, for the reasons you just said, Mark, I wanted to help people. And after 25 plus years of experience, I realized that there are so many people out there. They spend so much time in their career, at their job, in employment, and really don't have any idea of what to look out for, what the positive signs would be, what happens in employment, how the other dynamics that are out there, investors and bosses and organizations operate, and what they can do to protect themselves if they have any leverage at all. And that's the theme of a Negotiate Like a CEO is protect yourself from the potential downsides that could happen in employment.
Mm-hmm.
And they do happen. Bad things do happen. Now, we all hope in every employment relationship is going to go wonderfully and it'll go forever and we'll retire and things will go well. But that happens sometimes, maybe even happens a lot, but it doesn't happen all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so because I've seen all the good things that can happen and all the bad things that can happen, I wrote this book to help everybody that's out there, because we spend so much time in employment and in our careers, but don't know all that much about it sometimes.
Would you say that in today's corporate environment, more than ever, it's prevalent more than ever what you do, what you've written this book for?
I would say, yes, as companies get more and more mature and learn more and more how to protect themselves from the employees, it's important for employees, whether you're just out of school or all the way up to the C-suite level, to know the playing field, to know what's out there, and to know how to protect yourself. Listen, you might not want to or might not have any leverage to protect yourself because you can't always do that, but at least you should know what's out there, what the playing field is, what to look out for, and how to improve your career. And if necessary, move before someone terminates your employment or someone creates a bad situation for you.
Right. Gee, that's a good one. Now, in my research on you, your career, you've negotiated robust employment agreements. Just to mention a few: separation agreements, M&A agreements. What's an M&A agreement?
An M&A agreement is M&A is short for mergers and acquisitions.
Oh, of course.
And that is an agreement where one company is purchasing another company. So we've had negotiated them directly, typically for the target company, the company that's being acquired. But we often represent individuals or management teams in an acquisition, usually of the target, the company being acquired. And there are a whole bunch of dynamics that happen in that kind of acquisition. And the first is the management team going to survive the acquisition? In other words, are they going to be there to run the new company or run the division in the new company? And I do talk about that in the book.
Right. Well, there are a couple of others here. I wouldn't mind you breaking them down for us laymen. Separation agreements. What are they?
So a separation agreement is a agreement that's negotiated at the back end of employment. That is, you don't have a protective employment agreement, you don't have a protective offer letter, and you're being forced out, you're being asked to leave, you're being terminated. And so separation means you're separating from your employee and employer. And in many circumstances, the employee can negotiate a separation agreement, meaning an exit agreement, where they typically would be paid some amount of salary. They'd be typically, if they're lucky or they can negotiate for this, they'll be paid some amount of COBRA payment premiums, the premiums that you would pay to COBRA. Perhaps if equity is important on the back end in the separation agreement, you can negotiate perhaps some vesting or accelerated vesting of your stock options or restricted stock units or profit interest or whatever equity you're receiving, and other back end items that might be important to you. And then typically you enter into the agreement, and the company, in return for whatever it's given you, that is you, the departing employee, it gets a release of all claims, which is what the company wants,
right,
so that it never has to, frankly, consider or worry about deal with the ex-employee ever again.
And what about stock option agreements and restricted stock agreements? Is that as easy as it looks or sounds?
They're easy to sign, but you want to know exactly what they say. And with equity, you want to know exactly what you're receiving. And I'll explain that in just a second. But for what it means, a stock option agreement is an agreement that an employee enters into with the company that says you'll receive, you, the employee, will receive a certain amount of stock in the company if certain things happen. They're typically either if you work a period of time. So, for example, if you work for 4 years, you'll receive a certain amount of equity, and that equity often vests, means you have a right to that equity over time. So let's say 1/48th of the total amount of shares per month until 4 years you're vested. Or alternatively, they can be performance-based. Restricted, in other words, you hit a milestone, think of it as commission employment. You hit some sort of milestone and you get vesting of your equity. Restricted stock agreement is that employees enter where they're actually given stock rather than options. Now, what you have to know is all about equity before you go into a company, particularly if it's a company that's not yet public. So what does it mean to get 1,000 shares, 10,000 shares, 100,000 shares at a company? And you need to know what a cap table is. So I talk about this, a capitalization table. You also need to know, if you're at a company that's not public, what liquidation preferences are, because you can have a lot of stock options. You can have many shares in a restricted stock agreement, but they might not be worth anything to you if other investors take first, let's say, at a sale or an equity. So there are a lot of things. It appears simple. They're easy to sign. Many people sign them, including all the way up to CEOs, without ever reading those agreements. But to be fully informed, you would need to know a lot more than just what the words are in the document.
Oh, yeah, boy. Where were you when I needed you? I can tell you now. The last couple, management carve-out agreements and, of course, the non-compete agreements.
So the management carve-out agreement is an agreement that typically is signed between the board of the company and its management team or CEO, some group of those individuals. It can sometimes extend down to senior and mid-level managers. And what it basically says is, we'll take you help us sell the company. And if we sell the company at a certain amount of a sales price, we'll take some percentage of that sales price and distribute it to you, the management team, to you, the senior executives, to you, whoever the group is. That's called the carving out. So why is it called a management carve-out agreement? This is typically for companies where that equity we just discussed, those stock options, those restricted stock, is going to be valueless or not of maximum value in a exit. So it's typically with companies that are struggling, and they could have good cash flow, but they could have good revenue, but they're struggling in the sense that the equity they've given to the management team, the equity they've given to all the employees, which is common stock, is not worth so much on a sale because there's so much investment that to stimulate the management team, the CEO, maybe the mid-level managers to sell the company, the board says, I'm going to carve out some of the sales price to give it to you. Now, the non-compete agreement, which are prevalent in practically every state in the country other than California, maybe Oklahoma and North Dakota, where they're not permitted or not prohibited in large part. That's an agreement that says if you leave our company for some period of time, you can't compete. Or if you leave our company for some period of time, you can't
Right.
go to the customers that we've had.
Right.
And those can be very, very restrictive. Think of that as restricting the movement of labor.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Oh well, I've heard of those. That one I do know, and there's a lot of if and maybe because should have, could have, would have with those, isn't there? There's a it's not that easy, right?
Tons of should have, could have, would have. Imagine Mark Bishop. You imagine you signed you're not an employee. I know you have your own podcast and your own company and your own media center. But let's just make believe you signed an agreement with someone that says, if you don't do the show for me, Mark Bishop show, you want to call it something else. You want to call it something other than nothing like a good book. Then you can do that, but you can't do that in Tucson, or you can't do that in Arizona, or you can't do that anywhere in the United States. You got to do it somewhere else. And you would maybe sign that agreement at the beginning when you're just starting out, but shoulda, coulda, woulda, you 3 years later, 2 years later, 5 years later, you're knocking yourself over the head and you're thinking, I'm stuck now. I'm like a slave to this particular show it's a great show. Don't get me wrong, but I can't go somewhere else.
I know what you mean.
You know.
Yeah, I know what you mean exactly. So be super careful. Boys and girls, this is wonderful education you're getting here. And of course, the show stays up on my site, Mark Bishop Media Forever, so you can go over and over it. But the book is fascinating. I mean, this fellow is a high-tech Silicon Valley attorney, He's brutally honest in assessing a situation and advising his clients. And in the book, which we're talking about, Negotiate Like a CEO, you'll learn to be aware, to recognize potential employment pitfalls. And the biggest thing of all is how to protect yourself. You'll also learn that you may have more leverage than you might think, either now or as you advance in your career. And that's from Grady Harp. Who's he? Well, he's an Amazon Top 100 Hall of Fame reviewer. He loves the thing. So what is the top thing? Let me ask you this. So Stein, what is the top thing people can do to protect themselves when entering into an employment agreement?
They can negotiate their protection or separation agreement, if you will, on day one. And that's the best thing they can do. For sometimes if you have an offer letter that's just 1 page or 2 pages long, but you're going into a situation and you want to protect something, whether it's getting paid on the back end if you get fired, or whether it's protecting your equity or medical payments or something, and you write something like that, whatever it is, and you write a 1 sentence in this offer letter because you're just starting out, you don't have that much leverage.
Mm-hmm.
That 1 sentence can protect you. So, for example, if you terminate my employment for any reason other than for cause, and you narrowly define cause, you, the company, will accelerate the vesting of my stock options by 1 year, period. That can help the newbie. For the executive at the senior level, negotiating a full suite, if you will, of protective provisions for whatever that's important for you in employment.
Mm-hmm. So in what way, Jotham, do executives most often get taken advantage of by their company?
They don't negotiate what I'm calling this a protective prenuptial agreement, professional prenuptial agreement on day one. They think everything's going to go well, and they work very hard, and they build the company, and then they get forced out for one reason or another. And the forcing out of someone who's spent years building a company is the painful emotionally,
Mm-hmm.
but they get taken advantage of money-wise, fund-wise, equity-wise by not being paid what they think they're going to be paid, or not receiving the equity that they think they would receive. Remember that vesting of equity that we talked about earlier. It doesn't vest once you're terminated.
Right.
That's the way it happens.
Now, in your new book, Jotham Stein, Negotiate Like a CEO, you do highlight 59 fictional entrepreneur and executive experiences. Are these based on real circumstances that you've seen throughout your career?
I call them like a genre of a book, right? These are events that happen, kinds of experience that happen over and over and over again. And so they're completely fictional. I actually wrote them at the Pete's Coffee and had a great time doing it. And they're meant to underscore the lessons that I'm trying to bring to everybody, the information I'm trying to bring to everybody in the book.
Mm-hmm.
But they're meant to be a breezy and easy read with fun characters, and that's why I wrote them. But they are, to answer your question again, they're not based on any facts, but they are they're genres of stories that happens over and over again in employment. And so, for example, there are good stories and there are bad stories. But as an example, people regularly come to me with they're put on a performance improvement plan, for example. And this is not a CEO situation, not a C-suite situation, but underscores that this book is for for everybody, really. And so what happens in a performance improvement plan, how people try to interact or resist it, and what the company's real interests are, for example, it's addressed in one of the stories. That happens regularly. People come to me with those situations and have very similar reactions when they're given the situation. Similarly, there are stories about where the board controls the company, and the CEO and the management team really has no control of the company, and what happens. So these happen regularly. I hear about them. I advise on them, and so I wrote the fictional stories to address those genres.
Well, I want to give you another rap on the back. Credit where it's due is my great belief in life. And this particular person, Bonnie Crater, well, she says, as a CEO and multi-time Silicon Valley executive, I was very fortunate to learn from Jotham early in my career the great importance of the protective employment offer letter. Employment law is very complex, and with this book, you can learn from the best. Wow. Now, who's Bonnie Crater, Mark? Well, she's co-founder and CEO of Full Circle Insights, former SVP of Salesforce.com, that's no slacky, and former SVP of Genesis, and former VP Oracle, former VP Netscape. That's who Bonnie Crater is. So she's given you a hell of a pat on the back there, mate. So how do you feel about that?
Well, I feel great that she, both that she thinks that and she was willing to endorse me and put that in the book, and you know what, she's a great person and a wonderful exec. So yeah, Bonnie's a great person.
Okay, now what are you really hoping for that anybody that buys this book is going to get from it, take away from it?
I'm hoping that they're going to take away, that they're going to be able to say, I learned so much about my employment. I learned so much about what to look out for. I learned so much about what happens during employment. I learned so much about all the things I never knew in employment. And for those that aren't unfortunate enough to be terminated or forced out, I learned that it didn't just happen to me. I'm not alone, and I can reincarnate myself. And through your book, it helped me. It helped me be able to do that. It helped me to be able to protect myself. It helped me to learn about employment, and it helped me to be in the situation that so many of my clients are 6 months later to say getting fired is the best thing that ever happened to me.
Wow. Well, I tell you what I'm going to do. When CNN call me and give me a chance, I'm taking your book in with me for the interview. Now, tell me, what are some tips for people recovering after being taken advantage of by their company? Give me a short version.
Short version one is it didn't just happen to you. You're not alone. That's the emotional part of it. It may not make you feel better in the short term because nobody likes to get fired, but you're not alone. It's happened to others, and not only that, it's happened to others that have been very successful in their careers later on. I have advised, and I know of many employees, many entrepreneurs, many executives, many employees in all walks of their career, in all stages of their career, who've been fired and have reincarnated themselves with a new job, with new employment, sometimes with a new career, and have been much more successful and have been incredibly successful as they grow after the bad experience. So that would be what I would tell anybody in that circumstance.
Well, you also emphasize, in all honesty, that this book is not just for executives, but for everyone in the corporate world. I mean, how can this book help someone just starting out, though, in their career?
Well, in a number of different ways. One is, first of all, they can go in fully informed as they advance their career. Number two, a lot of people that are starting out, particularly in this world where the employers are looking for employees, they have a lot more leverage than they would think. And so that's another way. Third way is to go, if you don't have any leverage, to go in to employment relationship, to the dynamics, the tea leaves, what can happen, good and bad, with your eyes wide open, and those are some of the ways. Plus, there's a description of all of the common sort of documents you're going to see: confidentiality agreements, stock option agreements, offer letters, employment agreements, and what to look out for. And even if there's nothing you can do about those documents, wouldn't you want to be fully informed? And if there's something you can do about it, then wouldn't you want to have insurance against the downside?
Well, I tell you what, I'm going to get this interview up, of course, on my LinkedIn, and I mean that's a good site, I think, for you to be able to get this book out to. You have also written another book, Executive Employment Law: Protecting Executives, Entrepreneurs, and Employees. Tell us a little bit about that.
That's a book, a how-to book for lawyers, to teach lawyers how to represent entrepreneurs and executives and employees in all stages of their career. So it is a book published by LexisNexis, which is the behemoth, the gorilla in the world of how-to books for lawyers.
Mm-hmm.
And, it has, I don't know, 800, 1,000, 1,200 footnotes in it, just like you'd have a how-to book. So the book I've written, Negotiate Like a CEO, is written for everybody, a trade book, one that's a breezy read. The book you asked me about, Executive Employment Law, it's a great book if you're a lawyer, if you're a practitioner, if you're in-house counsel and you want to know how practitioners think, to buy that book. But it's a completely different kind of book. It's literally sits down with the lawyer, metaphorically because it's a book, and teaches the lawyer how to represent an entrepreneur or executive throughout the stages of their career.
That's good. So you've got both ends covered already, a couple of bookends, right?
That's exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I've got the how-to technical book, and I've got the book that everybody out there that's actually an entrepreneur, executive, an employee, whatever, just graduating MBA school, just coming into the workforce from undergraduate, and everybody in between can read.
Right.
So,
all right. Well, look, what's next then? In closing, I mean, do you have plans for future books?
Not well. It's a good question. I'm writing and working on things, but I'm not ready to release what I'm working on. But I'm always active. And I have a lot of good ideas.
That's all right. No, I understand. We haven't signed an NDA yet, so.
Right. That's an agreement you didn't ask me about. So,
yeah. Well, all right. Well, tell us then. Go on. What's an NDA?
NDA stands for non-disclosure agreement. It is what not so many employees sign them, but often entrepreneurs sign them and businesses sign them with each other, which says, we'll give you some information and you agree not to disclose it. And if you do disclose it, bad things happen to you. So
right.
That's what obviously you were saying. It's because you know what it meant, NDA, with me when we were talking about what my next book might be. You haven't signed a non-disclosure agreement. So if I talked about it, you could then talk with everybody else about it, which, since it's an early stage, I wouldn't want you to do that.
No, believe me. Anyway, right now I couldn't afford to scratch myself. No matter what else. Jotham Stein, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, grandmas and grandpops, Negotiate Like a CEO is the name of the book. It's a fabulous gift in my mind to give. It's not Christmas yet, and what else is out there? Every weekend there's something. Come on. So think about it. Where can I buy the thing anyway, Jotham? Tell me.
Two places. One, you can go directly to Amazon and Negotiate Like a Book. You type it into Amazon and it will come up, and you can buy it right there. Or you can go to my website, Negotiate Like a CEO. I'm sorry, I think I said you'd put it in Negotiate Like a Good Book. Negotiate Like a CEO. You put that in Amazon and you can buy it directly. Or you can go to negotiatelikeaceo.net, negotiatelikeaceo.net. And there you'll see a description about the book. You can read more about the book. You can read some of these fictional stories. There's 2 up there on the website. You can learn more about me. And if you want to buy the book, you press the buy button. And you can buy it right off the website.
All right, do me a favor, will you? When we're done, email me those 3 that you mentioned, and I'll make sure they're also up on your bio on my site, and I'll have them up there where people can purchase the book as well, okay?
Okay, very good.
So that would be good. Fabulous. I hope big things come of this for you. I mean, I've been fortunate with Nothing Like a Good Book. I've had some incredible authors, some brand new authors too, releasing. Just had some wonderful news back the other day that one of my interviews with a gentleman, his book now, gone into Hollywood production for a series, TV series, and God knows what. So fabulous. You just never know. I'm a great believer of whatever the universe has got planned for you, and let's hope this thing gets into many, many hands, because I think it's a wonderful thing for the corporate world, and for workers. It would just stop so much pain out there, to be honest. I mean, don't you think so, Jotham?
Oh, absolutely. That's the whole point. I wanted to help people. That's why I wrote the book, and the way you just described it, yes, it would help a lot of people avoid the pain, or if they're going to sign up for the pain, at least they'll know they'll go in with their eyes wide open.
Absolutely fabulous. Jotham Stein, ladies and gentlemen, look for it. Negotiate Like a CEO. Thank you, Jotham. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much for having me on your show.
All right. Goodbye.